All right. Hello, boys and girls clubs of Albany, Georgia, family and community. Hey, we thank you so much for tuning in today to our Career on Wheels segment today with Mr. Shannon James, who is a CEO in the Atlanta, Georgia area. We're so excited to have him on today to share with us and the wonderful things that they are doing there with his organization and company. And we are just excited today on this Thursday. Hey, we're going to give you a moment to come on in and start sharing in this live adventure with us today. You don't want to miss the knowledge that'll be shared today by Mr. Shannon James. He is the CEO of Aerotropolis of Atlanta, and he will really bless you today in sharing so much knowledge with you today. Again, as you're coming on, start liking, start sharing. Hey, we want this to be an experience like none other. Even as we're imparting on today, inside of your comment section, there will be a Google Drive link that allows you to send us responses to today's event. Ask questions, submit the survey, drop names of future people that you would like to see come on this live. Again, this platform was created and developed upon empowering our teenagers and millennials and Generation Z and X to have an experience like none other, to meet people who they normally wouldn't get a chance to meet on an everyday life, to gain knowledge from them. And so stay tuned. Let's take a look at what Mr. James and his organization is really all about.
I am so proud to be here tonight, joining in the fellowship of the Aerotropolis and all of the cities that are represented here.
Woodward, along with other businesses and corporations, was one of the founding members of the Aerotropolis. And one of the reasons why I and Woodward are so invested in this process is that we believe that our future depends upon the area around the airport developing as a live, work, play community. And we are so inspired by the number of people who have joined this effort. We expect that in the next 5 to 10 years, this area will be transformed and will become the very hot spot in Atlanta.
Thank you to Shannon and his team for the job that they're doing, coming together to make sure that businesses know this is a place that they can come, they can grow, and they can thrive.
Aerotropolis Atlanta Alliance, where we want to help you land here and take off.
All right, so I hope that you all enjoyed that video. Hey, it gave great knowledge and overview of understanding of what Mr. Shannon James' role is and how important his organization is to the Atlanta area and how important Mr. James is himself to the Atlanta area. So, ladies and gentlemen, the moment that you all have been waiting for, our wonderful special guest, Mr. Shannon James.
Awesome. Good
Hello, sir.
afternoon.
How are you?
I'm doing great. How about yourself?
Great. Hey, it's so amazing to have you on today. And we're so excited for you to join us today on this platform.
Well, I'm excited to be here. Anytime I can reach out to my Boys and Girls Clubs of Albany is always a good feeling. So thank you.
No, thank you so much for this opportunity. So listen, I want to give you an opportunity for our listeners and viewers that are tuned in from across the country, and especially our Albany audience, to give you a chance to just shed some knowledge about yourself, who you are, and how you got on the pathway that you are. And we hope that you don't answer too many questions before our Q&A session. So I'm just going to give you some time just to share.
Well, thank you so much, Mr. Simmons, and to the Boys and Girls Club of Albany and all the many partners who have helped bring this career on wheels opportunity to fruition. I totally understand all the work that goes behind the scenes when you're putting on these types of events, especially in this era of virtual reality, right? And so
Yes,
just
sir.
want to commend you and your team and all the leadership at the Boys and Girls Club of Albany for everything you're doing for the community. And hopefully I can be a light and hopefully inspire someone because I too walked through those halls. I spent time in those study halls and the arts and crafts and game room and the teen nights, the sleepovers. And so this feels like a homecoming for me, for sure.
Yes, sir.
And so I guess, at least before I start speaking more about myself in general, I want to make sure to mention, and I think we're all understanding that we're going through a pandemic. We are in a health crisis. And so I want to make sure that if you haven't heard, I'm sure you're hearing it over and over again, but we have to protect ourselves during this time. We want to survive this crisis. And so in Atlanta, there's a big saying, stay at home if you can, mask up if you can't. And so I want to make sure to relay that message, not only to those here in Metro Atlanta, but all of my friends and family and young leaders in Albany, Georgia, to stay home if you can, but mask up if you can't. And so I just want to make sure to relay that message. And so here we are, we're virtual. And as Mr. Simmons mentioned, my name is Shannon James. and I am the president and CEO of the Aerotropolis Atlanta Alliance. A little bit about myself, as you can clearly tell, I am from Albany, Georgia. I grew up on the east side of Albany, behind the mill. For those who are familiar, I am a mill boy, and true and through. And we were fortunate when I was growing up, roughly about 7 or 8, the Boys and Girls Club opened their doors to our community. And the club really opened as a result of our community leaders really stepping up and vouching for the need for a space for kids like myself and others to have a safe space where we could go and learn and build relationships and continue to improve our trajectory in this universe. And so I want to, definitely send a thank you to all of those community leaders who first stepped up and answered the call, and then also to our Boys and Girls Clubs of Albany, the board of directors, for having the willingness to open that unit. I feel old because that unit is actually closed now, but there's a new center near Doherty High School at Thornton, and that I'm extremely excited about. I have toured it, and I think I'm more encouraged for your leader as well, Mr. Marvin Laster, who actually came through my unit at East Albany Boys and Girls Club. And it was really, watching guys like Marvin and, my brother who really led me ultimately to the Boys and Girls Club. And it really provided a safe haven for guys like me to really learn, how to develop my skills and my talents, how to build relationships with people, how to build this camaraderie and still be competitive. And I think probably the biggest is, establishing and creating mentors for life. And so to this day, I still lean on those mentors and have great relationships with many of them, still call, talk, and visit. I tell you, the juggernaut for our unit was none other than Michael Nelson, Skip. And so he is still in my life very intimately. And I have brothers to this day because of the Boys and Girls Club. And so no question, without a shadow of a doubt, I know for a fact that I would not be here in this seat having this call with you if it was not for the Boys and Girls Club. It was there where I really, no question. And I tell people all the time, and it was there where I really learned my skills for basketball. I was fortunate to make the high school team, middle school and high school basketball team, because the Boys and Girls
high school.
Well, I want to flash it up so everyone knows what high
Doherty
school.
High.
Doherty High Trojans in the house. I was part of the '97 state team and played under Charlie Givens, and through the Boys and Girls Club, it really just helped me understand how to deal with adversity, how to build relationships, how to compete, and then really understanding good study habits, how to study. And so it really gave me all those components to really succeed once I made it to high school at Doherty High, and then ultimately to college, where I attended Valdosta State University. For anyone on the call, Valdosta State in the house. So you can tell I hold these spaces near and dear to my heart. And so Valdosta State is really where I was fortunate to receive a basketball scholarship, and ultimately ended up pledging Kappa Alpha Psi fraternity. So any fraternity guys out there, it was a great experience. And so it ultimately allowed me to, I want to make sure that, I kind of correlate the experience of the Boys and Girls Club, how it ultimately helped me in college as well, because I'm not sure if the Torch Club is still going.
Yes,
but
sir.
Okay. So I was a member of the Torch Club, and then I ultimately became president of the Keystone Club. And so, learning how to lead and organize and, be thoughtful. It was the components of the Boys and Girls Club that helped lay the foundation for me. And then ultimately, by the time I got to college, I had all of these skills and understanding of how to navigate that I basically pulled from the Boys and Girls Club, and ultimately became the president of my fraternity at Valdosta State University. And so through that period is where, I really found myself, found growth, and, really helped hone in on exactly, who I wanted to become. And during that period is when I ultimately decided to pursue, a job. And so I'll never forget, it was in the room of me and my college roommate. He's actually my fraternity brother. He was my college basketball teammate, and he's my brother, Aaron Reed. We were having conversations. He actually went to Westover. We were having conversations about, hey, man, we got to get a job. It was the summer, and we were trying to determine, okay, let's not just get a job. Let's try and find something that, could help us once we get our degrees. And so we were both majoring in business, and Aaron was like, hey, man, we should go work at a bank. And it was like, yeah, man, we should work at a bank. I mean, they've got money and people, and we should go. And so we started applying, and then ultimately I was fortunate to get a job at Park Avenue Bank in Valdosta, Georgia. And this was a time where I was literally going to school, playing basketball, managing my fraternity as a leader, and working. And so, the Boys and Girls Club helped me understand how to manage multiple tasks, right? You can walk and chew gum at the same time. And so it was tough. It wasn't easy by any stretch, but I understood once I got in the bank and start understanding, okay, what's really going on here. I quickly grew an affinity to banking. And so I've always been good with numbers. I knew I was really good with, people and interacting, but, numbers were always my strength. And so banking just kind of naturally felt good. And so once I became a teller at Park Avenue Bank, it was great. I mean, I was, it felt good. I was, frontlining, just understanding just kind of the minutia of banking. And during that time period is when, I start realizing, okay, hey, I'm a junior here in college. I really need to start thinking about, is this a career move? I'm majoring in business. And so there were a lot of, business majors, circulating the bank. And so I noticed when I was a teller that they had a management trainee program. And a management trainee program is where you typically get accepted into a pretty competitive program where it trains you all over the bank. I mean, frontline, backline. I mean, you can literally come out of that program and start a bank. But what I quickly realized is that the people going inside of the program were getting promoted and like great promotions, not little promotions. These were great promotions. And so I said to myself, hey, man, I need to get in this program. And so I will never forget, I had a conversation with one of the local leaders that shall remain nameless. And when I approached the said leader, we talked about, my aspirations for banking. I said, hey, man, I'm great. I'm really enjoying this opportunity. And, I would love to become a commercial lender. Because I noticed people who were coming through this program. This was 2000 and man, you're making me go back. This is like 2003, 2004, roughly. And so, unfortunately, when I really unmasked myself to this leader, I was hopeful that it would be well received because most of the people enjoyed me. I didn't have any challenges, but unfortunately, when I mentioned to this leader that I wanted to become a commercial lender and I wanted to get into this program, unfortunately, I was not well received. This leader, unfortunately, unveiled to me that, hey, that's great. I think that's great aspiration, but have you ever thought about X? Have you ever thought about doing this or doing that?
Mhm.
Commercial lending is really hard, right?
Oh yeah.
And he told me this, okay? And I'm telling you from my mouth to you guys, this is what I heard, this is what I experienced. And this was 2003, okay? And so it was really frustrating. I mean, I was devastated. I mean, like really devastated. And because I'm looking at this growth happening and I wanted it and I thought I was deserving of it, but obviously the people who were responsible for my growth did not see that I had the potential. And so, of course, I went through a period where it hurt. It was painful. But I told myself, man, if this is what I want, right? And anybody from Albany, Georgia, that I know is on this call, we've got tremendous heart. And we work harder than anybody. Okay. I don't care what anybody says. We are hard workers. And so, I just basically said, Shannon, just man up, and you've got to figure this out. And so what I did was ultimately say to myself, where I was looking for opportunities to try and prove myself, because obviously they didn't think I had the capabilities. And so going to VSU, what I noticed was that during orientation, student orientation, and for our juniors and seniors out there, once you decide to go to college, ultimately, once you decide on that college, you're going to go to an orientation where they're going to basically kind of do a soft landing for you, help you understand, where the buildings are, where the classes are, dorms, so on and so forth, get used to the town and the school. And so at the time, there were no banks at these orientations. Well, in my mind, kids, we're broke. We need money. So how do we help make it easier for the parents? And there are no banks in this orientation. And so I made a proposal to, at the time, my direct supervisor. And, this lady, and I got to admit, she was very instrumental in keeping me positive, to be quite honest. She could have easily said, Shannon, you probably should think about something else. But she was very positive. And she agreed to allow me to explore the opportunity of working with our community liaison to potentially set up a table and start trying to figure out how to introduce the bank to these parents and these students. Well, when they did, that's when I knew it was over. They allowed me to set up a table at the orientation. I leveraged my relationships at the university to make sure we had a seat because it was a very well-known banking institution. And I played sports, and so I was kind of known, so it helped get me a seat. And once I did, I understood the moment, right? I knew that moment was my opportunity. And so I didn't play. I was all over it. I really sold the bank and forced the bank to really recognize and see me, to be quite honest. And so after that, we had this gangbuster amount of parents and individual accounts start rolling into the bank, and it opened up this opportunity that the bank didn't realize. And so, then is that the opportunity where leadership starts saying, hey, we maybe should really look at this guy. And there were a few leaders in the bank who no question believed in me, but everyone won't believe in you. And so I forced them to recognize me, and I continued to pursue my abilities to get into that program. And once they recognized that I actually had some skills and some talents, then other leadership decided to interview me, and then I was ultimately accepted as the first, actually the first and only African American in the management training program at then Park Avenue Bank. And so, yeah, it was surreal. And so that's when I knew, okay, my degree, I knew it took a degree in business. I majored in marketing and management. And so with a big focus in finance, took a lot of classes in understanding accounting. And so once I got into the program, that's when I really buckled down, worked my butt off, and just for 12 months, just understood and performed at as best as I possibly could. in that role. And so I ultimately got recruited and promoted to Metro Atlanta. This was roughly 2000 and end of 2006, entering 2007. And so I came to Snellville, actually, Gwinnett, as a
Mhm.
junior lender, junior commercial lender. And so in that role, I was responsible for just understanding how to lend money to small businesses. And that's in the form of, small equipment loans, working capital lines of credit, small building loans, things of that nature, and managing, their operating accounts and managing their relationships. And so it was, like drinking water from a fire hydrant, coming from, South Georgia, moving up to Metro Atlanta, and the pace was very fast. And so, and the relationships, there's so many relationships, there's so many people, is extremely sophisticated. And so, I was fortunate to have a really good mentor at the time by the name of Greg Russell. He and I are still very close to this day. And so Greg really helped me see and understand, how to think and work and perform thoughtfully in this role. And so the crazy thing is the economy tanked the next year, literally in 2008. And so for anyone who was around 2008 to 2011, it was the Great Recession. And so during that period, I transitioned over into special assets. And again, you have to understand 2008, everyone was just trying to keep a job, let alone get a job.
Rough year.
Kind of almost like today, it seems, right? I mean, we're
Yeah.
12 years later. But the Great Recession was something else. And so I was driving from Stone Mountain to Hall County, which is northeast Georgia, for about 3 years, to be quite honest. And in that role, it was different. I had to totally change my thought process, and special assets was more around managing the portfolio of the bank's assets and understanding how to mitigate the risk of exposure, and also selling those said assets to try and salvage whatever equity or interest we may have in the property. And so it was really like drinking water from a fire hydrant from 2008 to 2011. To be quite honest, during that period, it was interesting. I made really good friends as well. But I quickly realized that in this world of finance, especially as an African American, you are, no question, the expectations are higher. You're going to be constantly monitored, and people are going to always try and make sure that you're making good decisions and you're competent. And so there was this challenge being young, in Atlanta with a family around people I kind of didn't know in a space that I really didn't want to be in. But I knew that I had to feed my family, and I knew that, I wasn't going to quit anything. And so, it was a very, interesting time in my life. But I grew up big time during that period. And once I was able to illustrate to the new leadership that not only was I capable of doing the job and exceeding the job, then that's when, you become accepted. And so things got a lot easier at that point, but the economy recovered, and I was out of there. I got out of special assets in 2011, and then I went on to work for SunTrust Bank right here near Hartsfield-Jackson, Atlanta. That's when I entered this area of Metro, working as a commercial lender, really with companies about 10 million of revenue or below roughly, and just really doing the same thing, working capital, building loans, equipment, managing operating accounts. And so I did a really good job of just working my butt off and building relationships here in South Metro. And during that period, if you want to be successful, you have to go above and beyond. And so I started looking for ways to go above and beyond. And I basically joined the local chamber. I ultimately, South Fulton Chamber of Commerce, I became the CFO, and then ultimately started with the Aerotropolis Atlanta Alliance, the organization that I sit in now. This was back in 2014, 13, 14, roughly. And so around that time is when I really started deep diving and understanding, okay, what is the strategy for the region, and then what is the role of this nonprofit to that strategy. And when I came into the room, I quickly realized that it was the table of leaders of all leaders. I mean, you had Porsche, Delta, Hartsfield-Jackson, Chick-fil-A. I mean, I can go on and on about the partners. You had mayors. I mean, you had everyone sitting at the table saying, hey, we want to figure this out. And how do we utilize this new vision and strategy to bring something different to a region that has been historically underserved and underrepresented? And so right here in South Fulton and Clayton County is where the Aerotropolis Atlanta Alliance has really focused their efforts. And so once I joined the board, I ultimately became the chairman of the Investor and Finance Committee. And then, stepping up into leadership, trying to go above and beyond. And then they ultimately made me the chairman of the board in 2018. And then ultimately, as I sit now as the president and CEO. And so in my current role, my responsibilities are to really manage the expectations, the vision, and the strategy of our board of directors. And our strategy is really a concept that was borrowed from the East. It is very prevalent in areas like Asia, in Schiphol, Amsterdam, Hong Kong. I can go on, but in Europe, there are aerotropoli in those areas. And what an aerotropoli is, it really is a airport city. And so what they do is leverage the airport as a anchor, because airports are regional impact hubs. And so how do you leverage that anchor to now bring more development and more jobs and more business, and which ultimately spill over into communities and become ecosystems. And so here in South Metro, near our airport here in Atlanta, for those who don't know, we have the busiest, the most efficient airport in the galaxy, okay? The galaxy. So this airport its regional impact is the equivalent of our agricultural industry. So if you look at agriculture, it generates roughly about $60 billion annually. Hartsfield does about $64 billion. And so we've got this huge juggernaut that sits in the backyard of College Park, Hateville, East Point, Forest Park, Clayton County, city of South Fulton. I can go on and on about the cities. But for those who are familiar with this area, it has been historically underserved and underrepresented. There are great stories here. Don't get me wrong. I mean, there's a lot of goodness happening here, but not at the pace when you look at the Metro Atlanta region in Cobb or North Fulton or Gwinnett, right? We're not moving at the pace of those areas. And so our strategy is to leverage the airport and then start, how do we plan strategically around development, and how do we now start making those plans come to fruition with industry coming to the market, bringing jobs, which ultimately brings ecosystems and communities. And so the big whale that really got our organization started was Porsche Cars North America. They located their headquarters right here north of the airport, and Porsche Cars North America really helped really kick off our effort with the momentum we have. Our chairman emeritus is former legal counsel now for Porsche, and then so our new board member is his basic replacement. So we're operating at the highest levels from a public-private partnership to bring this strategy of a central business district around the airport to fruition. And we also understand that this is a regional play. So we've really brought all of your highest elected officials from South Fulton, 8 cities, 6 cities, and Clayton, including the Development Authority executive directors, including the Board of Commissioner chairmen. So from a public level, we have all of your decision makers. From a private level, we have basically all of the strong corporate partners in our region at the table. And so what we're doing in order to create this regional economic competitiveness. All right, sorry, I got someone at the door, but we'll get to that later. They'll leave something. But in order to bring this idea of regional economic competitiveness to fruition, we really do it through 3 strategies, and that's economic development, workforce development, and education. And so in economic development, I chair the Economic Development Collective, where you have all of your local EDs. We report and we strategize on how do we now think about land use and zoning. How do we think about projects, catalytic sites that we can leverage and strategize and bring to fruition. We also figure out how do we promote our area in a way that that is not the same narrative that has been carried about the region that we see. So basically, we've changed the narrative. We've changed the narrator, and we're changing the vision and the expectations of what's possible here. And so the Economic Development Collective is really a huge anchor of driving this said strategy. And we hope to see, big business and development that's inclusive, right? This inclusive strategy. And when I mean that, I say, well, okay, so pushing into our workforce development strategy is really around how do we help bridge more economic mobility for the residents that reside here. Our strategy is a rising tide that lifts all boats. And so what we've done is implemented training programs and partner with those who do it well, with SEFTA, which is a construction ready program, Generation, which is a hospitality program, and now Strive Atlanta, who will be bringing a logistics program. And so we're basically providing free training to local residents to now obtain the skills they need to now get placed into jobs, livable wage jobs, okay? Livable wage jobs that now helps their economic mobility. And if anyone knows our area here around the airport, this is a low to moderate income census tract. So there are several communities and residents who need this support. And so what we're doing is we're coming in and we're finding those who do it well, and we're funding them through our board leadership, and also our partners to lead those training initiatives. We've also partnered with WorkSource Georgia and created a WorkSource Aerotropolis because we have several different counties within the Aerotropolis and jurisdictions for WorkSource. So we've created a WorkSource Aerotropolis program director whose responsibility is to find job seekers and marry them with opportunity, and also work with our corporate partners to find talent. And it's working out extremely well. And then the final piece is that we're really now leveraging our colleges and universities, and we're getting ready to really move forward on a talent pipeline strategy, where we're now identifying the needs of our local employers and the skills, and working to prepare real-time training for not only at the college level, Atlanta Tech, Atlanta Metro, but also at the collegiate level at Clayton State University and the AU Center. And then now what that will do is help us create this hotbed of talent for industry to want to locate. And then now we become this cool space for industry. And so we're working now to build that. And then the final piece is education. We understood quickly that this strategy it really could not move forward and really make impact without our school systems. My chairman, Dr. Stuart Gully, who is the president of Woodward Academy, challenged me as soon as he came into the role. How do we figure out, how do we work with our schools? And so what we did is we brought in the superintendent for Clayton County. We brought in the area superintendent for Fulton County Schools, and they lead our education collective. And we're working on career pathways. And so we hosted a career expo just this past fall, where we had over 40 plus corporate partners We had an aviation row from Hartsfield-Jackson. We had about 400 plus students participate. We basically tied the corporate partners with the students via technology through a Hoover app that is tied to a program. I'm not sure if it's in Albany or not, but it's tied to a program that allows the students who have basically aspirations or talents to basically answer questions, and it marries their aspirations to industry. And so we took that app and tied it to our corporate partners so those students could be intentional when they came. So, hey, you have aspirations for, a Delta Ops opportunity. Go see Delta. And so it was very impactful. And so now we're getting ready to kick off an experiential learning program in partnership with Georgia Power. And so it's going to be huge. And so all of this work, right, is to help build the ecosystem to now bring forth a city, by the way, that looks like that, right? Now, I haven't talked about transportation, which is another big deal for us. We all know that connectivity is important for opportunity. And so we do have an Aerotropolis Atlanta Community Improvement District. I also sit on the board of that organization, and there's a lot of leadership that's intertwined between our two organizations as that organization focuses on transportation and how do we make connectivity real for our residents. And so I know you guys saw in the video, we also have an international presence. And so we have partners in Beijing. I am in China roughly 2 to 3 times a year, building those relationships, recruiting those industries to the market, and learning from the best practices from our partners in China, in Europe, and Schiphol, and Amsterdam. And then what it has done, it has exposed our area to those markets who had no idea that we had, 50,000 acres of undeveloped land here. And so it's been a real great experience, really just bringing a new vision, a new idea of what's possible to an area that has been historically underserved. And so I know I've said a lot, and so Mr. Simmons, I'll take a step back and we can do some Q&A.
Hey, and the information that you share has been mind blowing. It's really been knowledge to a lot of listeners. Even as you were talking, so many questions have hit my email, and I've just been trying to scroll just to make sure that I got everybody's question. One of the first things that a lot of people were asking, what's you growing up in Albany, going to Doherty High, going to Valdosta State, and having the opportunity to become the first working in the bank in the program, management training program. Somebody asked the question, what was it like for you to stand in a room as a young man and actually in a management training to become the first? What was it like for you back then being a Black banker?
Well, that's a really good question. I think at the time, I was really excited, for sure. Let's put that out there, because I knew that it was going to be difficult getting into a program like that in South Georgia. And so I would say it was exciting, but it was also terrifying because, you're constantly being monitored for, are you good enough? Are you smart enough? Do you have the competency? And can you, or is it, because you're Black, that's how you got in here? You get all of those, you feel those energies around people. And I've been fortunate to be able to read, maybe through my career, just be able to understand energy. And so, having to just constantly, have to prove myself, I think was probably the biggest feeling. But I will tell you, one of my mentors told me, that what you have to understand is that people put their pants on one leg at a time, just like you. And, confidence. And I think the biggest thing too is that confidence, right? Basketball prepared me, and to be quite honest, my own community in Albany, Georgia, behind the mill, prepared me to be able to, have confidence in myself. I used to run around my big brother a lot, and he didn't want me around all the time, and neither did his friends sometimes. And so, they in the community, we can be brutally honest with love. And so I think just dealing through all of that minutia ultimately helped me just kind of build the confidence to believe in myself. And so, once you get one good performance under your belt, you feel good about yourself. And you just have to keep remembering, that you are enough. And once you get that confirmed, it's all downhill.
And so, what's sharing in that experience and moving from Valdosta to Atlanta, transitional work for SunTrust? What was it like for you stepping into your current role that you have now as the CEO? What was the emotions that you felt once the announcement came out after the interview and everything, and you immediately picked up the phone and called mom?
well, actually, I think I picked up and called my wife first, but yeah, no, it was. So that's a really good question. I think what the listeners and the viewers have to understand is that I spent about 15 years, 14, 15 years of my career in banking. And so there were leadership. I actually left SunTrust and went to BB&T right before I came to this role. And so there were leadership at BB&T preparing me for the C-suite. And so, I felt like I knew my path in banking. Well, in this role, this is a new company. We're 6 years old. And so, and a nonprofit. And so, but what I quickly recognized is that what the mission of the organization was. And when I looked around the area, there were people who looked just like my communities in Albany, Georgia. And it made me realize that God was preparing me.
Yep.
He was preparing me for this. And so, it felt surreal. I was scared. I was excited and terrified at the same time. I guess it was the same feeling. But I knew the responsibility and the opportunity that I had. And I didn't want to let myself down. I didn't want to let my family down. And I didn't want to let the people back home who I know, we may not talk every day. We may not even communicate every year. But I know that they're rooting for me. So I gotta keep pushing.
So, are you working on a autobiography or writing a book to lay out all of these principles and skills that you develop over the years? Because I mean, just looking at our listeners, our males were so excited to see a young African American male to serve in a seat like yourself. And we get a chance so much to glean knowledge from our CEO Marvin Laster, and to get a chance to hear others share knowledge. So we want to know.
Well, you know what? You're to be honest, Mr. Simmons. I think you're right. So I have kind of subconsciously been doing some self-recordings of my thoughts, especially during this COVID-19 period. It has really allowed me an opportunity to reflect. And so, I've been, basically doing voice memos, like an autobiography almost. And so, yes, absolutely. I think there's a lot that I think I could share and help, young males, females, especially from my hometown of Albany, Georgia, because I understand that whole navigation process. I mean, it was complicated. I mean, I don't want anyone to think that I got into this role by it was easy. This was probably the hardest thing I've done in my life. But being committed and believing in myself and listening and having good mentors, and making sure that I kept humility and also a thirst for knowledge, I think has really helped me get to this point. And I think I've got some keys to help people unlock those opportunities, and I love to share
I think you just named your book title right there.
them.
And
You
so,
might be right.
what it what is a typical work day like for you? Leaving home, and making sure the family is okay, and hitting the road and seeing all the area and development. And every step you make is like me. You can come up with an idea right then and there. What
Oh
is it
man,
like for you on a typical work day?
man, we have we need a whole nother interview for that. Um, but I will try to sum it up, and people have to understand, right? In my role, I am working with 13 cities, which means, the mayor, the economic development director, the city manager. I'm working with the planning staff, and, community residents who are listening and trying to determine, how can, we figure this thing out. Then I'm working with, our private partners, all those private corporate executives that I mentioned, as well as my 38 board of directors. And so, we need a whole nother interview to explain my day, but I will start by saying, I wake up every day thinking about how can I help make our organization go from good to great. And so, and that means being fearless. That means being humble. That means being willing to listen to everyone. I'm talking about from the person who is homeless, to the person who is from Ed Sebastian with Delta. I mean, you have to be open. And so for me, I'm on the phone constantly. I'm sending emails constantly. I'm in meetings constantly. And I am thinking 24/7. And so, that's the one thing I would challenge all of our juniors and seniors out there to pick up a book, continue to flex your mental muscle, because the more you build it, the more dangerous you'll become. And so, and just understanding how to continue to seek your potential. But for me, Mr. Simmons, we need a whole nother. And listen, we're dealing with conflict too. So people have to
Yeah.
understand this isn't a bed of roses I'm walking over. I wish it was like Coming to America, right? Have somebody throwing me roses. But listen, it is challenging. And
It's
anytime you're doing something different, right? That's not the same, you're disrupting. And so people don't like change. And so, we're constantly having to, have conversations, be strategic. Man, my day is loaded. I wish I could say
and the
one more thing.
opportunities to impart in others, even with the conflict for day. And I know with you balancing everything out every day, it can become stressful, it can become tiring. But the reward is so impactful.
Mhm.
To see the work that you're doing, to see the opportunities that you're creating for others, to see how you transition from the good life city of Albany, Georgia, to make major moves in the city of Atlanta. And many of us get to Atlanta and we go straight to the airport and come straight out.
And we're gonna change that. See, when you guys start coming to the A and you go to Hartsfield, when you look around and you start seeing things popping up, right? You'll know I'm in the dead center of it, because I'll share with you in College Park, right, to the east, to the west of the airport. We were very instrumental in working with the city of College Park to now move forward with 320 acres of mixed use development. It's going to bring north of $5 billion of economic impact. And
Oh
so you're
wow.
talking residential housing, you're talking office, over 2 million square feet of office. We're talking retail. I mean, it's going to be, we feel, the new epicenter of the South. And so, trust me, we're working on that.
And I can say this: I serve on the State Skills USA board.
Hmm.
And each year, when we have the state convention in Atlanta, at the Atlanta Marriott over by the Georgia World Congress
Mhm.
Center, I do enjoy the development that we are seeing in the new hotels that are going
Mhm.
up in that area. So
Mhm.
I can say that you all are making major moves and major impact in the city.
Thank
Um,
you.
you shared so much knowledge in your introduction that really covered a lot of the questions that a lot of people had asked.
Right.
And I have already asked a personal favor of mine is this summer when we get ready to do Man Cave. That you will take time out of your schedule to come back and do Man Cave with us this summer.
No doubt.
But I do want to share at least about 2 to 3 minutes just to impart some final knowledge and wisdom to the teens and young adults that are watching right now. During this pandemic, a lot of seniors did not get a chance to march across the
Mm.
stage with their family members yelling, but we have done so many things virtual for them. And I do want to shout out to our 13 seniors that are graduating this year. And at least all of them have done great this school year, but especially to the 10 that have high GPAs of 3.5 and over.
Wow.
And so I especially want to shout out to them. But if you being the guru, and just shedding some knowledge and wisdom to them.
Well, as always, you're in an interesting space when you graduate from high school. And first, I want to say congratulations as well. I mean, this is a huge, opportunity and a huge win that each of you have accomplished. Do not take for granted this what you've done. I want to totally commend everyone who's done so, and so. I definitely want to say that first, but I would say to our juniors and seniors to really think about, as you prepare for your next stage in life, right? To continue to maintain the growth mindset, okay? Because it took the growth mindset to get you over this hump, right? And you're going to need it more than ever, right? Because is levels to this, right? When you graduate from high school, you take it to the next level. If you're fortunate to go to college or you decide to pick up a trade or a skill, because, I believe that, listen, everybody isn't meant to go to college, okay? I know people, and we're preaching to our community now that for those who aren't, what you should think about seriously is now picking up a trade, going to a school that can help you get a skill to ultimately be able to provide. But for those who are going to college, be prepared to, be challenged because when you become uncomfortable, right, and you will be uncomfortable, just understand that is growth happening. Okay, you're growing, and that's why it doesn't feel good or it doesn't feel like you want it to feel. And as long as you keep having those feelings in your stomach, and you keep having those questions in your head, then you're going down the right path. Don't
Mhm.
it's okay to have those feelings. Don't feel that you're having these thoughts because you're inept. That's natural. I would just say continue the fight, continue to be confident in yourself and your abilities because you are valuable, and just understand once you get the degree, right, or whenever you get the certificate of skill or whatever it is, then there's another layer, right? And so the growth mindset, the more you read about it, the more you understand it, the more you'll be able to manage those emotions and that adversity. And coming from, I understand you guys are coming from, my communities, from Westover to, Monroe to Doherty. I mean, although they're different sides of town, it's the same city, guys. And so when you step out of the city, you will be more prepared for the next stage in life than you think, because the environment that you're coming from is really setting the stage for your next chapter in your life. And I would also ask you to really try and find a mentor, someone who you can trust, you can believe in. You're coming through the Boys and Girls Club. There are mentors all over. I wouldn't say all over, but they're there. And so, how do you find one and just stay connected and be able to trust and have conversations with as you continue this life path? And so, I want to commend you. Continue the good fight. It will not be easy. If it was easy, it wouldn't be worth having. So good luck.
Hey, thank you so much again, on the behalf of our CEO, and the entire Boys and Girls Club staff, and Miss Loretta Brown personally, told me to tell you hello.
Hey, Ms. Brown. And Marvin Laughter too, man. Listen, the CEO, I just want to give mad love to Marvin. You guys don't understand. I mean, watching Marvin win, the Youth of the Year, it gave me inspiration, right? And when he won, I'm listening to his speech and I'm man, he got it, and I want it. And so it gave me inspiration, and then ultimately I became the Youth of the Year, and it just gave me this path, right? People to look at and emulate and figure out how do I, bring my own, but still kind of get to where their swag is. I don't know if I've gotten to Mr. Laughter swag yet, but maybe one day.
Hey, you're doing some amazing things. Hey, I look up to people like you and Marvin and take nuggets and glean from you all, to continue to build on the legacy for the teams that, are coming up after me. And
That's right.
so we're so appreciative of you taking time out of your day and schedule to impart knowledge, to listeners and viewers all across the country. So a special shout out to all Boys and Girls Club members from across America, to every organization that's tuning in and watching today. We hope that this knowledge and information that's been shared today, by Mr. Shannon James, yeah, we're gonna forgive you for coming on a Monroe High platform, sharing about Doherty High.
I had to.
But again, listeners and viewers, hey, thank you so much for this opportunity. As always, look in the comments, fill out the Google form survey. This video will remain up for you to constantly come back and listen to the nuggets and jewels that have been, mentioned here today by Mr. Shannon James. Hey, Mr. James, thank you so much. And we look forward to hearing from you sooner than later.
No doubt you will. I'm looking forward to the man cave.
Yes, sir. Hey, coming up in June, we'll be ready for it.
Let's go.
All right, now, thank you so much. All right, Boys and Girls Club. Hey, on Tuesday, we will have Middle Georgia State University, coming on, and they'll be sharing an awesome opportunity about the wonderful things that Middle Georgia has to offer, during this pandemic, about virtual programming, about application fee waiver. And also on next Tuesday, we have another special guest, Mr. Wiggins, who is the CEO of the Job Corps in Washington, D.C., and another special guest as well that will be joining along with him. So you don't want to miss these opportunities. Keep sharing in these opportunities and these live videos, for they are great knowledge and information tools that will help you for the rest of your life. Can do like I do. Go back, listen to them from time to time, just to be abreast of some information and knowledge that'll help pump you up during this pandemic and this COVID-19. Again, thank you so much to Mr. Shannon James and his staff for allowing and taking time out of his schedule today to come on and share. Hey, you listened and heard from a jewel. He used to be, born and raised in Albany, Georgia. Went to the East Side Boys and Girls Club here, part of the Boys and Girls Club of Albany. Former Youth of the Year, Valdosta State grad, member of Kappa Alpha Psi, and worked his way up to becoming now president and CEO of Aerotropolis Atlanta. Hey, so you just experienced another Boys and Girls Club Career on Wheels segment. Hey, we'll see you next week. Take care.